Thank you, Andrew. And look, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I thought I'd wear the Central City uniform this morning. Look, the best thing about the earthquake is I don't have to worry about what to put on in the morning. Jeans, high-vis vest, t-shirt, that's it. It must be the only central city in the world where you wear a high-vis vest if you don't want to stand out in the crowd. Look, I'm very excited by the program this morning. I'm really looking forward to being inspired by our speakers. But I thought when we start out, what I'd like to do is to look back. I mean, every journey starts in the past. I think that for us locals, we're going to have to grieve before we can move on and rebuild. And don't get me wrong, I think we'll grasp every opportunity with two hands. I don't mean to be negative about it, but I do think that we have to acknowledge that where we've come from and the things we've lost. Now, I thought what I'd do is share some of my experiences in walking through the red zone, just to give people a little bit of an appreciation of what's happening. Unfortunately, we can't get everybody into the red zone, and look, I was very pleased to hear Jerry Brownlee, asking Sarah, who controls access to the red zone, to see if they can find a way of doing it. But there are a lot of dangerous buildings. It's very hard to see how we can get people, thousands of people in safely. But look, the most horrifying thing for me really was the lack of people. When you get in there, it's silent. There are no people. And when we think of cities, I think we think of buildings, we think of roads, we think of squares and fountains, but actually it's people. That's what it is really. It's a cluster of people. And without those people, it's apocalyptic, really. You look around and it feels as though an alien spaceship has just been down and sucked all the people away. And there are all the traces of human occupation, the tables, the chairs, racks of clothes in the shops, wallets, cups and glasses sitting there, and yet no people, and it's silent, except for just birds singing. People say to me, this must be your dream job, Hugh. You've got a city to design, a blank canvas. And I kind of look at them and say, look, the red zone is my worst nightmare, a city without people. One of the, I don't think the photos really convey what it's like in there, and look, I apologise for that. When you arrive in there, it's all around you. On each side, it's under your feet, broken glass and twisted roads. There's a smell. You can smell the rotten food and so on. There's the silence. So it's a kind of it's a sense around experience, and it left me deeply shocked and certainly with a grieving. Now, I think undoubtedly the most tragic and traumatic losses are those people who've lost family and friends in the earthquake. But I think even people like me who've been fortunate and been spared that loss, will have some grieving for the lost parts of the city. Perhaps kind of equally disconcerting is the kind of immediate destruction. I have a lovely 1920s. I did have a lovely 1920s brick house on Murray Ainsley, and I guess my love affair with brick is over. I think we've all seen the kind of destruction, buildings falling down, unreinforced masonry buildings falling down. But maybe kind of as you walk through the central city, and I found myself doing little double takes down the street, and kind of look down the street, and it's all very familiar. But then you realise that actually every one of those buildings, none of those buildings appears to be vertical. Actually, I think the Forsyth Bar building there is roughly vertical, close to it. But the other two buildings are actually leaning in opposite directions. And it's kind of, you see that quite much more clearly when you're out there and you're doing a photo. But it's disconcerting. And then perhaps even more uncomfortable, you come across buildings like this, one of my favourite buildings in town, the SBS building, designed by Peter Bevan, and it looks perfect. Looks absolutely fine. But the structural engineer that I was walking with, she looked at it and just shook her head and said, look, inside there's significant structural damage, and it's unclear whether they'll be able to save that building. The Brannigan's building, you can see here as we walk past, they were breaking out all the glass. They realised that there was actually a really big hazard in all these big glass windows, shattering and dropping onto people. And can see the workmen there cracking that out. I'm sure a lot of you will have heard about the Copthorne Hotel in Durham Street, and again, that's going to be demolished. But you can see that in order, this is in the car park underneath the Copthorne, and you can see the barrels that the engineers and the USAR teams have been in and put around the columns to stabilise them and fill them with concrete. You know, and I would have hated to have been doing that job. These are the stairwells from the Forsyth Barn. I'm sure you're aware, so I think the building is reasonably secure, but the stairwells fell out, they're lying in a gap, and that's the hole of the stairwell they came out of. And the forces, when you see the Grand Chancellor, you know, the forces that are generated, the building's torn apart, it's bent, it's ripped, and it's quite intimidating. Now I think in one sense, you know, we need to remember that actually the forces generated by this earthquake were far stronger than the design codes that our buildings are built to. And in a way, the question we need to ask is why more buildings didn't collapse rather than less. And then there's the loss of landmarks, the places you love, the places you really care about, and in particular the ANZ Tower is one of my favourite buildings which is gone. The Fisher Building on High Street, this is my barber, you know, no more am I going to get my hair cut there. Suckling shoes, you know, where I buy shoes. They finally got their byline right, I think. And then of course the whole parts of town that have disappeared. You know, streets that are missing. High Street, Colombo Street, Manchester Street. We don't know how many buildings are going to be lost, but we think there'll be 3 waves of demolition. Sarah and Civil Defence are taking out dangerous buildings now, they're talking about 900 buildings. But then the insurers and the landowners will be starting to say, weigh out the cost of replacement versus the cost of repair. More buildings will come down and they'll say, look, it's more we're going to have to replace this building than it is to repair. And then of course we'll have late demolitions, you know, court cases and so on after that. So it's going to be a long process. I think you're all aware that the earthquake's given us an act, we've got our own act, we've got our own minister, and we've got a new government department. Now, the act says, Council, you develop a recovery plan for the central city to be approved by the minister. And probably the important thing here is, you know, we've got to consult with affected communities. That's you, or the locals anyway. That's legalese for you guys. We've got to do it in 9 months, effectively. So it's a very tight time frame. We've got to hold public hearings in that time. Now, one of the things I would like to kind of clear up is the council can't do this on its own. You know, if I made an analogy with a garden, you know, the garden said, Christchurch was a garden. You know, we provide the infrastructure. You know, there's the garden irrigation system working. We also provide the paths, the patios, the spaces, you know, the roads, the streets, the squares, and so on. And we provide a few of the attractions, the libraries, the art gallery, the town hall. But really, that's a pretty bare garden like that. We rely on the private sector to provide the colour, the shrubbery. That's what people come to the garden for, the businesses, the restaurants, the bars, the offices. And in reality, it doesn't become a place until we get the public, the people coming back to it. The council can't do this on its own. It's got to be a partnership. Now, last weekend we kicked off with an expo, and I'm just going to share a few highlights from that. We're starting to kind of analyse the ideas from it. There'll be 10,000 people, you know, coming to the expo. 40,000 ideas odd, you know, you give or take a few thousand given to us, and we're starting to analyse those. I guess one of the ways we're doing it is people typing all those post-its up and putting them into a computer system, and we've got, you know, a whole team of people kind of starting to interrogate the data. No waterboarding, I promise. This is a word map, a word cloud, and it kind of shows you the words that were most frequently used by people when they were putting in their ideas. It just gives you an idea, I guess, of what they were most concerned with. Buildings, green spaces, cycle, shops. You know, so it's just a kind of an indication of what people thought was important. These are if you look for what people wanted more of, these are the 4 top categories, you know, that came out. And each of these had more than sort of 6,000 ideas related to it. So green, people, pedestrians, trees, they wanted more of that. If you look at what they wanted less of, cars, traffic, concrete, buses. So no real surprises. And we'll certainly work on getting a lot better information out of it than that. But look, at the end of the day, you know, I guess I just come back to the fact that the future of the central city is not in the minister's hands, it's not in the new government department's hands, it's in our hands, it's in yours and my hands. Whether we choose to go back there, whether we choose to invest our money, whether we choose to spend our money there, whether we commit to it as the heart of the city, we're the ones who make that choice. So, look, please share an idea, get involved, and stand up and be counted. Thank you.